This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Ruling junta in Mali postpones key meeting to discuss the country's political future. Demonstrators take to the streets in Mauritius over the handling of a recent oil spill. And Africa joins the world in mourning the demise of Black Panther actor Chadwick Boseman. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. African countries continue to step up efforts to contain the coronavirus pandemic. And in sports, Kenyan Olympic champion Concestus Kipruto recovers from COVID-19. Once again, welcome to Africa Live. Thank you so much for joining us. So good to have you with us. We begin in West Africa, where Mali's military junta has postponed a critical meeting in determining the country's political destiny. The coup leaders were expected to hold talks with stakeholders in Bamako on Saturday to discuss a list of demands by the Economic Community of West African States. They say the meeting was not possible due to organizational problems. ECOWAS has told the coup leaders that they must transfer power to a civilian-led transitional government immediately and elections to be held within a year.
International pressure has been mounting for the restoration of civilian rule in Mali. And this is what leaders of the Economic Community of West African States have now agreed upon.
It is decided that the civilian transition must take into account the following elements. 1. The nomination of a transitional president. This civilian person, recognized for their professional qualities, intellectual and moral integrity, will be in charge of leading the transition. The president of the transition will not be a candidate in the next presidential election. 2. The nomination of a civilian prime minister and head of state, recognized for his or her professional qualities and his or her intellectual and moral integrity. This prime minister also will not be a candidate in the next presidential election.
But opposition players in Mali have a different opinion.
No, it is incomprehensible, and it is a bad assessment of the situation. ECOWAS needs to revise its position and to understand that we are not against a 3-year transition. We are not opposed to having a military or a civilian in charge. We know that soldiers are Malians and that there are some civilians who are worse than the military. And there are some very good soldiers who can be better than civilians. The question today is not about Mali needing a civilian or a soldier, but it needs a statesman.
We don't understand the position of the international community as expressed via ECOWAS. But regardless, we believe that we must respect Malians in an inclusive manner in order to decide on what is acceptable and to join us in this process, and not to believe that ECOWAS must decide what is good and what is bad for Mali.
The regional bloc argues that no military structure should transcend the transitional president. Should the leaders of the coup agree to the demands, then ECOWAS says it would gradually lift imposed sanctions. The bloc suspended Mali from its institutions, shut borders, and halted financial flows with the country, following the ouster of Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. The soldiers behind the coup want the sanctions lifted, and as a gesture of goodwill, released Keïta on Thursday.
I do not believe that we need to fix a deadline before we can identify what needs to be done. It would be more rational, more reassuring to establish the tasks for the transition, but to proceed by fixing dates without taking account of the tasks that need to be achieved seems to me to be slightly arbitrary.
An ordinary ECOWAS summit is slated for the 7th of September to review the progress in Mali. In the meantime, some sources say the transition period could be extended for a couple of months to accommodate the rainy season in Mali. Chamrono, CGTN.
To North Africa now, where protesters have taken to the streets in Libya following the suspension of the interior minister serving under the Tripoli-based government of national accord. Dozens of Libyans gathered in the streets of Misrata in solidarity against the decision. They voiced their concerns over what they described as mounting corruption in the country. Fatih Bashaga is facing investigations into his handling of street protests and a violent crackdown against protesters. The probe is being conducted by the GNA leadership. In the meantime, a deputy minister, Khalid Ahmed Mazen, will assume Bashaga's duties. Bashaga was nominated in 2018 and has played a central role during an offensive by rival eastern-based forces on the capital, Tripoli.
Lately, Bashaga emerged as the man of the difficult moment by fighting corruption. We found out that the corrupt are the ones who fought the man who said he fights corruption. This is why we demand bringing Bashaga back as interior minister, and we demand fighting corruption and all those who threaten the state.
Meanwhile, Egyptian authorities say they've arrested the acting leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, Mahmoud Azzat. The arrest is the latest blow to Egypt's oldest and most organized Islamist movement. It is now designated as a terrorist organization and is being accused in court of espionage and terrorism.
For 7 years, Mahmoud Azzat has been living in the shadows. Security forces have been hunting him after the 2013 government crackdown against the Muslim Brotherhood. The Interior Ministry announced this week that the search is over. Azzat has been arrested in Cairo, and the group's deepest secrets should get exposed to the authorities.
He is a very cautious person, a master of hiding. He rarely uses cell phones, and when he does, he never uses that device again. He has been the Secretary General of the group, the secret keeper. This position enabled him to draw the policies of the organization and get in contact with all members across the country. He knows everything, the generations, who supports who funds. He has full insight over the finances of the Brotherhood and has been managing it since 2013.
The 76-year-old doctor was the deputy to the supreme leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, Mohammed Badia. He became the #1 man in the organization after Badia's arrest. His fall will greatly affect the Islamist group with the biggest number of followers in the world.
Lately, Mahmoud Azzat has been seeing that violence is no longer in the group's interest, although he believes strongly in resorting to violence. After his arrest, the Muslim Brotherhood militia groups could respond with terrorist attacks. There will be division among the group to appoint a successor, but Azzat's arrest could help in revealing the identity of these militias and their future plans.
Azzat's arrest will definitely slow down the activity of the Brotherhood. Egyptian courts have convicted him in absentia in cases of murder, assassination, and espionage. Mahmoud Azzat has received 2 death penalties and 2 life sentences in prison, all in absentia. Now that he's in the custody of the Egyptian authorities, he will be interrogated before a retrial. It's still not clear if he will be facing new charges. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
In Mauritius, thousands of demonstrators have been protesting in the capital over the government's handling of an oil spill from a grounded Japanese ship, MV Wakashio. At least 40 dolphins were found near the site of the spill, further aggravating anger among residents and environmentalists. Some experts fear the chemicals in the fuel are to blame. The government has said it will carry out autopsies on all dead mammals. So far, veterinarians have examined only 2 carcasses. They bore signs of injury, but no trace of oil in their bodies, according to preliminary autopsy results. It has been a month after the ship struck a coral reef ashore. It later cracked and spilled over 1,000 tons of fuel oil into fragile marine areas. In South Africa, 2 police officers have been arrested and charged with murdering a 16-year-old boy in Eldorado Park, southwest of Johannesburg. The 2 were also charged with tampering with the crime scene. Since his death on Wednesday night, the community has been in uproar. Angela Coppola has more.
Nathaniel was a Down syndrome child, described as a gentle soul and friendly to everyone.
He's not a threat to anybody. Maybe they were busy with the illegal stuff and they thought Nathaniel heard something and they shot him.
Nathaniel was gunned down by 2 police officers just 100 meters from his home.
Well, I think the first response would have been shock. So he would have basically been taken by surprise. So he would have then just maybe froze in his condition, especially since he had a speech impairment. Obviously, he wasn't able to express himself as clearly as the officers would have liked him to do.
The Minister of Police has promised swift action. The 2 officers have since been arrested for murder and tampering with a crime scene.
I'm going to court to ask him, how can you shoot a Down syndrome 16-year-old? How did you get it right? Because still now I can't believe that you shoot my son.
The family's loss is immeasurable, and they are still in shock and looking for answers.
Too much. A big hole. A big hole. Nathaniel was, he was a golden boy. He was a golden boy.
We can't even imagine what kind of pain I am right now. Just to think of the kind of courageous boy he is, fighting at that precious moment for his life. It's unbearable.
I appreciate you opening up, man. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Be strong. This is a community in crisis, and this latest death hopefully will galvanize the authorities to get the issues sorted out that are facing this community. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Eldorado Park, South Africa.
The news continues on Africa Live. Here's a look at what's ahead. African countries continue to step up efforts to contain the coronavirus pandemic. And Africa joins the world in mourning the demise of Black Panther actor Chadwick Boseman.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
Welcome to the world today on CGTN.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. And now to our continuing coverage of the coronavirus pandemic. Tunisia's Ministry of Health has made the wearing of face masks mandatory throughout the North African nation. People who fail to observe the new regulation will have to pay fines ranging between $300 and $1,600 or serve time in jail. Authorities could also double the fine for repeat offenders. CGTN's Adnan Chouachi has more details.
The decision to make the wearing of face masks compulsory follows an increase in the number of coronavirus infections in the country. Tunisia's health minister says the COVID-19 task force will enforce the new requirement.
The new law grants judges judicial discretion. Offenders will be fined by law enforcing agents and courts. They could also be sentenced to jail terms. This period could go up to 6 months. The state's goal is not to put people in jail. It's rather to convince offenders to wear face masks.
The director of the National Observatory for New and Emerging Diseases noted that the emergence of new hotspots in 6 different regions is due to failure to comply with sector-specific health protocols and guidelines, mainly wearing face masks in public places.
People do not wear face masks in the streets and in public transport. They do not respect the health protocol. They still gather at marriages, family celebrations in public spaces without abiding by social distancing. This behavior will only lead to a surge in the number of infections.
Many Tunisians have welcomed the decision of the Health Ministry.
I think that offenders must be fined even if the penalties are high. The fine is more than 1 month's salary. That's how people will respect the prevention measures. Otherwise, only some people will wear the face masks, especially in public transport.
The number of COVID-19 deaths in Tunisia since the outbreak began in March reached 71. Most of those who succumbed to the coronavirus suffered from chronic diseases and had an average age of 69. With the reopening of borders on June 27th, Tunisia reported 500 imported cases. The Minister of Health stressed the importance of wearing face masks, washing hands regularly, and abiding by social distancing and self-isolation protocol to contain the spread of the virus. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Meanwhile, Somalia is considered one of the rare countries where many of the COVID-19 rules do not strictly apply. This is despite the government's attempt to impose the directives. The government has eventually chosen not to be strict on observance of restrictions, a decision informed by a recent decrease in daily COVID-19 infections. Many residents have also decided to adopt to a new normal, but differences abound among locals over the threat posed by COVID-19.
I'm still wearing a face mask. What forced me to wear a face mask is that I still believe that the coronavirus is in Somalia. I want to protect myself from contracting the disease. Looking at how people around the world are dying from the coronavirus, I decided to protect myself wearing a face mask. I believe everyone should wear one.
I believe there's no coronavirus. The awareness campaigns have reduced. People stopped wearing masks and gloves. The government doesn't exaggerate about the disease anymore. I believe corona cases have also reduced.
In Kenya, a public university is awaiting approval to begin trials of its locally designed respirator. Students from different disciplines teamed up earlier this year to assemble the device. The ventilator is expected to help address the shortage of equipment needed to treat serious COVID-19 cases.
This device is for now known as Tibavent. It has successfully undergone quality testing under the watch of institutions set up by the Kenyan government. The team working on the prototype is awaiting approval from Kenya's Ethics Review Committee, which looks into the safety of any equipment. Clinical trials are expected to begin soon after.
Indeed, these efforts are to be applauded because mechanical ventilation is a cornerstone in management of severe pneumonia, especially that caused by COVID-19. If these machines are eventually approved by KEBS and mass-produced, they'll go a long way in alleviating not only COVID-19 pneumonia, but pneumonia caused by other infectious agents.
So far, there are 3 educational institutions in Kenya racing to mass-produce locally assembled respirators. The students from Kenyatta University conceived their idea in March.
Currently, we only know there are about 270 ICU beds within the country, and not all of them are possibly equipped with ventilators, some probably shall. It is with this in mind that we have set up a production unit that should be able to do roughly about 50 ventilators per week.
The current shortage of ventilators has inspired the students to develop their own at a much lower price.
The ventilator, if you look at it, is not majorly also only for COVID, it's also post-COVID, because even after COVID, a ventilator, the cheapest one used to cost 3 million before even taxing. So when you import, it comes around 4.5 M. But having Kenya produce its own ventilators for a cost of less than that, 2 million is still something. So it may not only be for COVID, also for other diseases which are respiratory.
The model is expected to go a long way in assisting Kenya to deal with severe cases of the coronavirus.
A lot of patients require these machines for oxygenation. and unfortunately there are not enough to go around. And once one patient is hooked up to one, it can take as long as 2 weeks before they come out, and some even stay longer on these machines. So there has to be sufficient numbers for not only ICU beds, but also mechanical ventilators and monitors.
Once authorized, the team has the capacity to produce up to 50 respirators a week. Jane Keo, CGTN.
Actor Chadwick Boseman, best known for his lead role in the film Black Panther, has died aged 43. Boseman was diagnosed with colon cancer 4 years ago, according to his social media accounts. Joy Kiruki with the details.
The death of Chadwick Boseman has come as a shock to many movie lovers. Boseman, a native of South Carolina, passed away at his home with his wife and family at his side, according to his social media accounts. He endeared the hearts of many in 2018 for his role as King T'Challa in the film Black Panther. During his screen career, he played a number of real-life characters famed for breaking racial barriers in America. Movies he starred in include Get On Up, Marshall, and baseball pioneer Jackie Robinson in 42.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I don't even have to have hopes. I know what it means to see somebody that looks like you and play the hero and the villain, and have the freedom to be both things. So that's a beautiful thing, because it frees the human spirit. The key thing as an actor is to not judge the characters that you play. That's how you can play them and actually have compassion on them. So to be able to sit through this movie and go through that inner conflict, it frees up everyone, not just young black men and women, but people of all races.
Black Panther became one of the highest grossing films in 2018 and was nominated for 6 Oscars. The movie won 3 Academy Awards in the Best Original Score, Best Costume Design and Best Production Design categories. The statement on his social media platforms says Boseman was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer in 2016 and the disease ultimately progressed to stage 4. A movie star who will be greatly missed. Joy Kiruki Juma, CGTN.
Chadwick Boseman is best known to many as the regal Black Panther in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Here in Kenya, many have expressed shock, grief, and gratitude for the man that he was. CGTN's Daniel Arap Moy reports.
Last but not least, our king, Mr. Chadwick Boseman.
Reaction to Chadwick Boseman's death was swift and profound, with many people expressing their condolences.
Much as I'm mourning Chadwick, I'd say he's a symbol of a positive African story. Chadwick accepted a role of T'Challa on Black Panther, which changed the narrative that African stories are always negative.
I feel like we've suffered such a great loss because we were so proud. We were so proud to have this superhero come out that represents us as Black people, and you're like, oh wow, all of a sudden everybody is happy and, you know, embracing their Africanness and embracing their Blackness. And I don't think that any other actor would have been able to embrace that role apart from Chadwick Boseman, and I'm very, very sad to hear about his loss.
Some viewed him as a gentle soul and a brilliant artist who left an indelible mark in their lives.
From the interviews, you'd see that he was a really humble guy, and that is something that at least I've always learned from him.
Having been diagnosed with colon cancer like 4 years ago, it's quite unbelievable that he could do all that despite the illness that he had. And what I could pick from that is a lot of encouragement and strength, even for someone who did not know him along his whole career path.
From Jackie Robinson to the Black Panther, one of his famous movies of our time, Chadwick inspired generations. His death is simply a blow to the film industry. Daniel Arap Moy, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
And we'll see you on the other side of the break with your sports news. Here's a look at the headlines. Kenyan Olympic champion Conseslus Kipruto recovers from COVID-19.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours?